From Beyond Marketing, it's the 20-Minute Call, a podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, check out the 20-Minute Call hosted by me, James LeBarry. My guest today is joining me here on the 20-Minute Call podcast for the second time. The last time we spoke with Rich Grimm was episode 12, nearly a year ago, and we left off that episode wanting to have him back to hear about his two monster boogies that were going back to back in both the Seychelles and South Africa. And for anyone that knows Rich and all that goes into these things, we think that he's crazy. But he pulled it off, and he lived to tell the tale. And so, Rich, welcome back to the 20-Minute Call. So excited to hear about your adventures abroad.
Hey, James, how's it going? It's an honor. I have to ask, am I the first repeat guest?
You are the second.
Okay.
You are the second. We had
There's going to be a lot of pressure to be the first.
Our first repeat guest was last week, was Cheryl Stearns. She came back.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
We had a lot of things to cover in her incredible career, so it was good to have her back.
Good.
So good stuff. First, let's start where you are calling in from. You are in Cleveland.
Well, I'm actually in my hometown, right by Sharon, Pennsylvania. I'm at my cousin's house right now. I've been up to the States. I came up for 4th of July and visited my daughter in New York City. And then where I'm actually I did some jumps up at Skydive Cleveland, which is where I made my first jump in 1980. And it's great to go back there and back to the roots. And then I'm actually going to go out. I'm hoping to get to Skydive Chicago this weekend and make a few jumps and head up to Oshkosh. I'm so excited, the first time ever to go there and look at all the flying machines. And of course, there's so many skydivers that go there. So there'll be a lot of friends I'll run into. Already been talking to some people. And then from Oshkosh, I'm going to head out to, the Lost Prairie Boogie. And then from Lost Prairie, I'm going to drive down to San Diego and see my son and then head home. And I'm flying solo. My wife has been so tired of traveling. She flew to the Seychelles and then flew back because my daughter was coming to our house in Costa Rica for spring break. And then she flew back to Cape Town to meet me for the South Africa boogie. So she's kind of over airplane travel. So I'm on a little few week skydive and Oshkosh trip. So great to see you.
Great to see you, Rich. When I grow up, I want to be like you, my friend.
Well, good.
Well, there's so much to cover here, and I think I want to start with the planning. You were planning two major boogies on essentially opposite sides of the world concurrently, registering all the admin that go down with it. Do you have any regret doing that? Would you do that again?
I don't have any regrets doing it. It was great, and we can get into it in a little bit. The Seychelles boogie was really, probably logistically and administratively, dealing with civil aviation in Seychelles, it was probably the most difficult boogie I've ever hosted. The South Africa boogie was amazing, but then we ran into some weather things, and I thought maybe this is going to be the first tsunami boogie in history that we never made a skydive. So, so where would you like to start? Seychelles first?
Yeah, let's start with Seychelles. And by the way, I recall seeing a video, and I think it was in French, featuring you and the boogie in Seychelles, if I'm not mistaken. And it looked like everything was smooth as silk. It looked like everybody was so glad to have you and the whole crew down. Clearly, not everything was as it appeared, media facing. So take us a little bit behind the scenes. What was the hardest part of the logistics of doing that?
Sure. So one of the hardest things of doing a boogie on the other side of the world is the time difference, right? So, and I worked with Francesco Drossi for Seychelles, and I worked with Billy Sharman, the DZO at Skydive Pretoria for the South Africa event. So it's either early morning for me in Costa Rica. It's either early morning phone calls or late evening, late, middle of the night phone calls and emails and to try to do that. So that adds the time change adds quite a little bit to the logistics. For Seychelles, I worked with Francesco Drossi, who was partners with Gabor Visco in the Fly Seychelles, the drop zone they're trying to get going. And they've done some in-hop boogies with Evan Rockney before we came out to do the boogie. So this was basically 2 years of planning. And I think the last time I had spoken to you, my wife and I were just getting ready to fly out to the Seychelles to meet the president and to look at the hotels and meet with civil aviation. So we flew out there in October and met with Francesco, and we met with civil aviation. We got to go meet the president of the Seychelles, and which was pretty cool to go to the State House. And he loved talking skydiving with us because the Evan's been training the military there. And then we went to civil aviation, and then, that's all. Oh, we're going to do make it great, easy for you. We're glad for you to be here, which did not turn out to be the case. So, and as glamorous as that sounds, my wife and I left Costa Rica 2 days to get to Seychelles, stayed 4 days, flew home 2 days. So and we had basically the first 3 days were work, and then finally on the last day we actually went out and swam in the ocean and spent some time together. So that was a lot of work that we had to do.
Let me ask you, for those, we hear Seychelles, but for those that are unfamiliar, where actually on the globe is the Seychelles?
So it is in the Indian Ocean, and it's just east of Africa, east of Madagascar. So it's sort of between Madagascar and Maldives. Pretty far. So
pretty far
from Costa Rica.
So did you, when you departed from that first trip of meeting with the president and meeting with civil aviation, did you leave feeling like, oh, this is going to be great? Did you have a sense, oh, we're in for some problems?
I had a sense we were in for some problems. Let's see, Seychelles was my 29th or 30th boogie that I've done. And so from meeting with people and discussing things, you can kind of have a sense of what you're in for. And I knew our logistics was going to be difficult because we had the skydivers in two separate hotels, because the one hotel that we wanted to get would not give us the entire hotel. So we had 40 some rooms at that hotel, and we had the entire 26 rooms of the host hotel where we were based every day. And that was a bit of a walk between the hotels, or a bit of a drive. So I knew we were going to have logistics issues there. Then the airport was about a 25 to 30 minute drive away. I knew we were going to have logistics there. And in the Seychelles, it's extremely tropical. So it would be pouring at the airport and be completely sunny at the drop zone, or it would be completely pouring at the drop zone and be completely sunny. There's a little ridge, a little hill in between the island there. So I just knew we were going to run into some technical challenges, logistical challenges. So then when the boogie started, everything was great. And we used Marcus Bastuk's airplane from Germany, from Skydive Czar, which we used his airplane, the same airplane, for the Maldives event we did in 2020. So Marcus, put his airplane through maintenance and had everything to go. We brought extra tires. We had extra parts. We got there to the boogie. Everything was going great. The airplane made it. We also had the Dornier 228 that the military has there. We got to do some jumps out of that. One of the greatest things we did, we skydived onto Bird Island. And Bird Island is the most northern island in the Seychelles group of islands. There's 100-year-old tortoises there. They have Esmeralda there that's supposed to be, according to legend, the oldest living thing on Earth. It's like 200-year-old tortoise named Esmeralda. Actually has his own Wikipedia page. So this island incredible little grass runway. We met the owner, Alex, and his son, really nice people. They welcomed us to jump. And just the logistics for this. So imagine this. We're on Pralin Island. It's 40 some miles from Bird Island, and we've got to go 20 some miles to the island that we're getting fuel on with the main airport, because we could not get fuel. That was one of the sticking points with civil aviation. They wouldn't allow us to have fuel at the airport, portable like barrels of fuel. So we had to figure out how many people we could put on each airplane for the fuel, the weight and balance to take off, fly to Bird Island, fly back, pick people up, fly to Bird Island, land at Bird Island, pick people up, fly them back to jump at Pralin, go for fuel. So myself and Marcus sat down with his two pilots, and I think it took us probably 8 hours to work it all out for how we could get all of the jumpers. I think we had just over 100 skydivers there. So we had to figure out how to get everyone to jump at Bird Island and to do it with the fuel and the timing. And we did that over 2 days because we didn't have enough time to do it, all in one day. I mean, we needed some NASA engineers to help us with this. So we sat down and with the calculator and figured it all out. So just to pull that off logistically was incredible. And plus, we're busing people over the hill from the hotel to the airport. My partner at the Costa Rica Boogies, David Clark, I actually brought him with me to help be the airplane supervisor at the airport and load the plane and let us know what was going on with that. So now I'm out at Bird Island. So we have the WhatsApp group. So we're like, okay, what's the load? Who's coming? I'm giving them the weather reports. So I went to the island both days in case anyone got hurt. I took the medical bag, and because with my medical training, the fireman background, so I'm there at the beach watching people land. Francesco was out. We had a little safety boat that he was in, and it went off without a hitch. Unfortunately, the very first load, those guys got wet. Little tropical weather came in, and they landed. They were a little drenched, but after that, all of the groups had beautiful sunny skies. And you're flying out there, and a few people actually told me that it rivaled the Blue Hole jump for the beauty. And the craziest thing, I go out there. And we landed with the plane. We dropped myself and Francesco and two of the packers off. And then the plane went back. We did not skydive in. We had to drop a bunch of stuff, the safety bag, with the medical gear. So when the first load came out and they jumped, and when the canopies opened, out of the row of trees, a gazillion birds took flight. I mean, I see now why it's called Bird Island. And wow, it caught me. Yeah, I mean, I saw the birds, but I did not know there were so many birds there, and they were flying around like, what is going on? And which was great. And the funniest thing is the owner's son and some of the workers would go out on the runway and had to shoo the tortoises off of the runway. And these tortoises are they're gigantic. So we had to make sure that the runway was clear so the caravan could land and pick people up. And then it would land and pick the people up, and then they would go back, and then they jumped back in at Pralin Island with the main island. So that was 2 days of that was absolutely fantastic. But then we had, when the jumping continued, as you know, we've talked about this before, what it's like people on island time. Well, one of the bus drivers decided he was going to stop and get some Indian food for lunch. And he was gone for 40 minutes, no bus. So I got skydiver. I got the planes running, waiting for skydivers. There's no bus. And, things that just make you pull your hair out. And then with the civil aviation there, they sent me a bill. They wanted $18,000 for security guards and lunches for the security guards for the 5 days we were there. So I had to argue with those guys, and just, and of course they would not let us have fuel there. They put all these onerous restrictions that we could not meet. So it was very stressful, but everyone was having a great time. And then, of course, Murphy's Law, the airplane flew over to get fuel. And when they went to start it, a relay exploded in the electrical box next to the engine, and the Caravan was toast. Now, luckily, we had made friends with the guys of the military that Francesco knows, and we got to actually, they stopped flights from the runway, the domestic flights, for a few minutes, and we towed the Caravan down to the military hangar because there's not a taxiway that went all the way there. So they towed Marcus's Caravan. We parked it there. I had to tell everyone, the worst thing as a boogie organizer, we're in the middle of the Indian Ocean. There's no other drop zones. I'm not getting an Otter or a Caravan or even a 182 from someone. And I had to tell everyone that the boogie was over. And for me, that's gut wrenching. And then I had to be, okay, we all got to jump Bird Island. I think everyone got to jump the military airplane. Everyone got to make some jumps on Praslin Island. We're in the Seychelles. It's not the end of the world. And I went to my hotel room, buried my head, and said, okay, we're in the Seychelles. So the next day, we went with Regan Tetlow and his girlfriend and my wife and David Clark and my wife's couple of friends that came along to the boogie. And we went and rode bicycles around La Digue. And it's like, okay, this is not the end of the world. But, I know Marcus as the aircraft provider felt horrible, because of what happened. It was just a random freak thing. But the pressure for that boogie was incredible. But then I got to be best man at Tom and Heidi Sanders' wedding on the beach. And then after the wedding, we had a farewell dinner that was one of the best we've ever had. And we had everyone singing, and Anna Moxley, some Bruno, and Andy Malchiotti playing guitar. And so what turned out so stressful ended magical. It really ended magical. And it's probably this boogie, I'm probably one of my proudest accomplishments, even more than Maldives, even more than jumping the Blue Hole. We overcame, and a lot of more things behind the scenes that we just don't have time to go into that you can imagine. It ended on such a spectacular high note that it made it all. And everyone got jumps in, so it's not like we got there and no one jumped. And those things happen, in the Nicaragua boogie. When we went there, the wind blew 100 miles an hour every day, and we got a day and a half jumps in there. So those things happen. And then it was bittersweet for me because right after, and I had worked with Francesco for 2 years, and we had talked on the phone daily for the last 3 or 4 months before the boogie, had 3-way phone calls with Marcus. He went to Norway and did his first base jump, and tragically, he died on his first base jump a few weeks after the boogie, and that tore my heart out. And my wife, who she had coffee with them every morning when we were at the boogie, and that was a very, very, very puts it in perspective. The things that we do in this sport, it really put it in a lot of things in perspective, and it was hard. It's still, it was a tough thing, and so yeah, Seychelles was something, and I think everyone that went had a fantastic time. When the plane breaks, I'm just glad it was on day 4 and not day 1. And so we basically, and then the next day it rained pretty hard for all morning. So we missed about probably 6 or 7 hours of loads that we could have flown. So that wasn't the end of the world. And that's something for people that are listening that have never been to an exotic boogie. If you want to jump hard, go to one of the major drop zones in the U.S. Go to Skydive Arizona or DeLand and jump your ass off hard in the good weather. If you come to an exotic boogie in the tropics, especially, you don't know what you're going to encounter. I mean, it could have rained every day. Those are the things that, as the organizer, it's crazy. I'm trying to check weather in the Seychelles 6 months ahead of the event. And, that doesn't, it's the tropics. Like it can, like I said, raining on one side of the island and sunny on the other side.
I imagine you have a disclaimer that more or less says, hey, you got to be flexible. You're going to be on an adventure, legit, and you just got to roll with the punches, I'm sure.
Right. And what people also don't understand, I have to guarantee Marcus a certain amount of money. I mean, he's flying the plane from Germany. Who does that?
Yeah, and I was blown away by the ferry route from Germany to the Maldives. How long did it take and what was the flight plan leaving Germany and flying to the Seychelles? How many hours and what was the route?
I don't know how they did it in 2 days, and they went Germany down across Greece, and I think they stopped somewhere, I think, to get fuel before they left Europe, and then they went to Nairobi and spent the night because we couldn't go to Djibouti because of what's going on in the Middle East. So all the U.S. military and European military aircraft were in Djibouti, so there was no parking for general aviation. So they went to Nairobi and then fueled up, and then I think they went Nairobi direct Seychelles because we had purchased a ferry tank, as we discussed on the last episode. We had this ferry tank, so they had that filled up. I mean, basically, come on, you're a flying bomb over the Indian Ocean. What could possibly go wrong? Looks good on paper, you first, right? Amazing operation. And then when the plane was broken, they actually had to get this electrical box. They got one from an aircraft, I think in the Netherlands. They flew that down commercially with a couple of mechanics. They repaired it. They had flew it around, fired it up, shut it down, fired it up to make sure it was okay. And then they had to go back to Prowlin Island because we had stored the ferry tank, the pump, extra tires. We had stored all of that in the fire station at the Prowlin Airport. The firefighters there, they were awesome. So they let us store it in one of their office rooms. So they had to go back, load all that up, and then fly it back to Germany.
So the aircraft had its issues on Bird Island, or
no? Luckily, it was on Mahe, on the main island there, right at the international airport. Which saved us because, like I said, we could tow it down to the military hangar, so we didn't have to pay the overnight parking for a month or 6 weeks, however long it took them to get it fixed.
A quick break here to address the Drop Zone owners listening to the pod. If you're a DZO, then you know the insanity of taking your passion and making it your business. Why'd you do that? Running a DZ is hard. Between the stressors of liability, 30-day payment terms on fuel after 4 weeks of miserable weather, and angry staff who are convinced they've been skipped in the rotation, you need a tool that helps reduce your stress. Enter Burble Software.
All right.
Conceived by a DZO who's been in the trenches just like you, Burble is the most sophisticated manifest and booking software on the planet. Your life as a DZO is hard enough, so don't be that DZO who tries to save a few bucks using software that wasn't built for us. Burble, the must-have drop zone management software for the 182DZ to the multi-turbine monster. Burble. Rich, tell me, what is the reaction of, say, hotel staff of all these crazy skydivers showing up and, they're not probably accustomed to seeing even skydiving happening. I mean, are you guys celebrities? I mean, you are not the normal guests that stay in these hotels and booking them out. I mean, I imagine it's very festive, skydivers being skydivers.
Every hotel we've ever stayed at, the management and the staff, they want to cry when we leave because we bring the vibe, we bring the energy. When we were in Maldives, we're at this beautiful resort, and I went there with Marcus beforehand to check out to see if this is where we wanted to do the boogie. And we're in the pool, no one's talking to anyone. You go for dinner, everyone's quiet, couples are just sitting by themselves. And then when the skydivers roll in, they're pushing tables together. It's loud. I mean, it is loud. And all the no shit there I was stories and everyone's so happy to see each other. because sometimes people don't see each other from around the world until they come to the Boogies. So people are catching up on everything, and every hotel that we've ever been to are. And the one thing, the skydivers tip the staff really well, and that's really nice. The skydivers always take care of the staff. When we leave, they're sad. And when we left Maldives, I can remember the staff, they were crying when we left. They were like so sad to see us go. Are you coming back next year? And same with in Seychelles, we brought, we brought the life, we brought the party. And that's everywhere. When we use the Barcelo Hotel in Costa Rica, it's quiet. It's families. It's mostly families from San Jose. They get some Canadian groups that come down in the wintertime. And then we show up and parachutes are coming out of the sky every 15 minutes and everyone's having fun in the pool bar. The pool's packed with the skydivers in the afternoon. And so we bring a good vibe. And luckily, no hotel's ever said don't ever come back here. So that's good.
So before we leave the Seychelles to talk about South Africa, how many registrants or participants did you have for Seychelles?
I think 152 for Seychelles.
Wow.
Counting everyone. Yeah.
That's very impressive. So am I right to say that the most stressful point was the airplane going down, or was there anything else that really drove your blood pressure up a little bit?
Probably I was a little elevated a few days just with trying to get people to the airport on the buses and the coordination of that and getting the people from the hotels. And so there was a few little behind the scenes hiccups that we had. But yeah, standing up in front of everyone that's paid you a lot of money. Most people flew from North America, and now you have to tell them, hey guys, the plane's broken. The one thing I've learned with these things, and I've always told the truth at the Boogies, and I'm not going to tell people, oh, well, maybe the plane will be fixed this afternoon. I can't. I'm not gonna tell people that. And we couldn't get the part. I just told them, look, the plane's broke and we're done. Go do whatever you want to do. And most people went scuba diving and sailing and jet skiing, and it wasn't like we were stuck at some drop zone with nothing else to do except skydive. And we're in the Seychelles, for goodness sake. So there was a lot of things for people to do, and so that, like I said, Tom and Heidi's wedding was beautiful, and Mad John, I don't know if you know Mad John Dobelman, legendary jumper from Northern California, always organizes at Lost Prairie and organizes my Boogies. He was the official of the wedding, and he was great. And so just to be there, and I had to pinch myself thinking, I'm the best man at a legendary guy's, who's a good friend of mine, at his wedding in the Seychelles. My 10-year-old self would have never believed a second of this. For me, that wedding and that farewell dinner made it all worth it. It really, and I got to jump onto Bird Island also and jumped with a lot of friends, Mike Bone and his group from Colorado, and Seth and G that are from Elsinore. And we to do that was so spectacular. And I got to do a jump with Anna Moxley's in a group. We took the two-way out of the Dornier, and I actually went head down, and she got a picture of me. I said, look, I'm showing you my skill set here, for you and Christian for your next competition. So she was laughing. So to do stuff like that, those things, make it all worthwhile for me. It really makes it all worthwhile.
Rich, how do you wear stress? I mean, your whole career has been tied to stress. DZO, restaurant owner, career firefighter. You've had a lot of stress in your life. How do you manage it?
Well, I think at the beginning of the Boogies, I would kind of lose my temper sometimes. I would, and I don't know if we discussed this, but I'm very easygoing. But when I get pushed to the limit, I explode and I go red with rage, and I hate myself for it, because I'm like, why did I do that? That does anyone no good. So So I think when the plane broke, I just had to go. I went to my room. I needed to be by myself. And I sat down and I just, okay, take a breath. We all jump Bird Island. And then the biggest thing is, no one's been hurt, right? Because that's the big thing. No one's hurt. We're in the Seychelles. We've got the wedding coming up Saturday. We've got the farewell dinner. We're all going to go have fun. Okay, don't be so upset about this. And my wife also is a sounding board for me. And I can remember at the Nicaragua boogie, the wind howling. I mean, I wanted to cry in my room every night. We were getting up at 5 a.m. to try to make jumps. And, the wind was still blowing 50 miles an hour. So those things, I've learned that I can't control that. And as long as the things that I can control go well, then the things I can't control don't stress me out as much anymore. I think as you get experience at the skydiving business, I think you learn you can only control the things that you can control. And I always say this, I can't go up and fly everyone's parachute for them. I can't make sure that everyone, lands where they're supposed to land on the beach. So we can give the most detailed briefings. We can talk about the safety. We can tell people you do not want to get hurt here, and then it's up to them. So I think I learned over the years to sort of calm myself and not get. You can't let the highs get too high and the lows get too low.
I think a credit to you, Rich, is I actually never knew until now that the plane broke down. Of the people that were there that I know, I never heard about it.
Oh, wow, that's good. That's good. And, the one thing I'd like to add, and I said this on the previous interview that we had, the people that come to the Tsunami Boogies, whether they've been to Mark and Lorenda from Canada, they've been to, I think, 15 of my boogies, probably the most of anyone. And then, or someone it's their first boogie. I think what happens is we've sort of, the Tsunami tribe, the atmosphere we have, I think people realize now the effort I put into these. And I think they talk to the newer people and they're like, hey, don't be upset. Look, it's not his fault the plane broke. So I think I have the older participants that have been to boogies help behind the scenes keep the newer participants with a reasonable expectation. I think that people understand I'm working as hard as I can behind the scenes to make everything go smooth. And if something's not going right, they know that that's out of my control, right? So, but I got to tell you, the participants that come to my boogies, they are the best people. I can't stress enough how I am blown away by when I announce a boogie, how many people it sells out, and I'm blown away by that. I don't know that just to this day it warms my heart, and I'm still amazed.
So cool. And the reason why I'm so fascinated about these conversations about these big events that you're doing is because there's so many logistics that are not in your control. It is in the recounting of it. When you watch a movie, when Disney, for example, puts on movies, there is a very set formula that it follows where, you certainly have a hero's journey where we get to know the personality and the character and the love interest, and then there's trial. And then overcoming the trial, and the emotional wave is high and it's low and it's high and it's low, and it takes that audience through. And when I listen to you, that's what I feel like I'm hearing is the story of, we're arriving and there's so much hope and it's good, but I got a little bit of trepidation in my heart. I hope something, doesn't go awry, and it goes awry, and it but in the end, there's a beautiful wedding and there's a sunset and we have an amazing toast, and wow, we did it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
If you're a fan of the 20-Minute Call, I'd like to invite you to be a member of a budding community with me on Patreon. By becoming a patron of the show, you can join me behind the scenes to discuss options for future guests and gain access to some show swag. It's pretty sweet. Details on how to become a patron can be found in the show notes. Okay, Back to the show. What is the time gap between the end of Seychelles and the beginning of the South Africa boogie?
I should have done my homework before this podcast interview. I think it was about 2.5 weeks of in between. So I flew to Billy Sharman's drop zone. I stayed at his place in Pretoria, and he's the DZO of Skydive Pretoria. And then my wife flew back to Costa Rica because our daughter and her best friend came down on spring break. Then she flew in and met me in Cape Town. So I stayed at Billy's. Then we took his PAC 750 as jump plane, and we went to this place, Zubula, and we went to this elephant sanctuary and this golf course place that we talked to the manager, and, of course, always looking for future boogie places. There's zebra and antelope, and it's incredible. Friend of mine, Jerry, now old skydiver, used to come to the Boogies and a longtime helicopter pilot from South Africa. He lived just outside Pretoria, so he picked me up one day and we toured all around Pretoria, and he gave me the history of things, which I found fascinating. Even though I lived through apartheid and I lived through the Nelson Mandela rise to power and stuff, as living in Southern California, you're paying attention to history, but you're not really paying attention to history. So to be in South Africa and to really talk to the local people, and it was amazing. And then we had a couple people meet us. So there was Mike Gregg and Jamie Surkia, two jumpers that were in Seychelles, and then Elizabeth and Patrick Higgins, who helped me with Boogies. They came because they're very good friends with Billy from when his Northern California days. They met us in Pretoria, and then we flew in the jump plane with Billy and his pilot Matthew, and we flew down to Cape Town, and we went to a drop zone skydive 2 Oceans. Really cute little place. DZO Blake and his girlfriend Jillian, super nice people. We jumped there, so I got a bunch of jumps in before the boogie. And then some of the people, because this is just outside Cape Town, and then we stayed at this beautiful little town called Wellington and got to meet the locals and went to these wineries. Oh, it was fabulous. Of course, the weather was hot. It was sunny. It was beautiful, not very windy. So I think I did like 8 jumps there, and jumped with the locals, and which was fun. And then everyone arrived in Cape Town. We have this beautiful hotel, Table Bay Resort, looking right up. My room's looking at Table Mountain. So everyone's doing tours. A bunch of us took a helicopter ride, a tour flight. And then myself and Higgy and I think Bruno Broken and Herman Landsman and I think Casey Pruitt, we went took the cable car up Table Mountain. All the young, energetic people hiked it. We're like, no, I'm taking the cable car. So we did that. So it was great to be a tourist. And then we went to this beautiful winery, Weaversburg Winery. The food layout was spectacular. But of course, the wind was howling that day.
Is this before the boogie actually begins, or now we're into it?
This is the part of the boogie. So the boogie started. It's day 2 of the boogie, day 3 of the boogie, and we're going to jump into this winery. And so we bus out to the winery, and Billy's like, I'm going to go up and do a test jump. Well, Billy's a great canopy pilot, great swooper, great competitor. And he lands, and I see the look on his face when I walk up, and he's like, it's time to drink. And then I talked to Matthew, his pilot, and Matt's like, oh my God. He's like, the plane, he goes, I was fighting the plane. It was so bumpy at like 2,000 feet. He's like, I thought the plane was just going to fall out of the sky. I'm like, okay, we're not jumping. So everyone understood. When we were at this winery, so the food was ridiculously off the hook, fantastic. Everyone was enjoying the wine. We hung out together. We bussed back. So wah, wah, wah. That's a whole nother year of planning, right?
So before we get past day 2 or 3, a question for you is, most of your boogies are around oceans.
Right.
Or sea. This is a totally different feel.
Right.
Totally different. I mean, you're not jumping, onto a beach or above ocean. Totally different vibe. How is that received? It's when we think tsunami, we think ocean, that type of thing. Different, but still great, I imagine.
Right. Well, part of the plan was to jump onto the beach then at Plettenberg Bay. So there was going to be beach jumps. So what we wanted to do was have a winery jump, beach jumps, game reserve jumps to kind of get sort of a mix of things. Because we're the traveling boogie for this event. So we get back to Cape Town, and then unfortunately my wife's plane broke in Newark or at JFK, so she could not get to Cape Town. So we missed each other. So I have this beautiful hotel room in Cape Town, and we missed each other. So we had these luxury buses. So now we're going to do the garden route and go to a little town called Neisner, a beautiful little town. So we get there. Now the weather's coming in. Cloudy, getting colder, rainy. And I mean, are you kidding me? I got sunburned at the winery, and now it's cold and rainy. So we get to the beach, and the next day, low clouds, sprinkling rain, cold, windy. So we can't jump. We have a restaurant reserved at the beach just for us for all day. So we're scrambling behind the scenes, and I said, okay, everyone, we're all going to go to the elephant reserve. There's elephants and baboons there. Then we're going to go have lunch. We're going to have to go to this pizza place, and we're going to go to the monkey reserve, and I'm going to cover all of it. So that we saved that day. Everyone had a great time, walking with elephants and getting their pictures, having a great time. So then that night we went to the bar and restaurant that we had reserved. We had a great party, more great food. The restaurant did a great job, and everyone, the dancing was off the hook fun. So everyone was having a great time. For me, I'm looking. This is one of the biggest beaches we would have ever jumped on at a Tsunami boogie, and I'm just like inside. I mean, I'm smiling at the dinner and I'm smiling watching it. But inside, my stomach is just churning, and I am pissed off at the weather, right? So we go back to Neisner, spend the night, and then the next day we're going to go to Shamwari Game Reserve. So we go to Shamwari Game Reserve. Spectacular. These lodges are spectacular. And when we get to Shamwari, we meet Joe, the CEO, and Yuri, the number 2 person, and Suzanne, the reservations lady. And okay, we sit down there like, what do you need? What do you need us to do? So we talk about the plans. And for the Seychelles, we had a bunch of WhatsApp groups. There must have been 5,000 messages back and forth. The Shamwari WhatsApp group, I think there were 6 messages, the entire boogie. These people were on it. So there's 6 or 7 lodges we had. And from the main lodge, Longley, where we were going to skydive, out to one of the farthest out lodges, it's about a 40-minute drive. I mean, this place is gigantic. So now we're going on these safaris: cheetahs, impalas, lions, elephants, rhinos, giraffes. Unbelievable, right? Hippos down in the river. But now the weather's coming in. It's getting colder. It's spitting a little rain, but we're still having a great time, and it's getting cold. We finally are going to get nice weather. We were supposed to jump on day 3. On day 4, we finally had the weather. So everyone from all the lodges, everyone at the boogie, I think there was 118 of us. Everyone came to the main lodge, and we were going to get everyone up on tandems that day, the non-jumpers, and we started jumping. And the resort had this buffet set up that was unbelievable. Little stations. There was like an ice cream station. There was nachos. There was a hamburger station. There was Indian food station. There was a sandwich station. So it was fantastic. I mean, this place is first class all the way because it's an all-inclusive. So we get up, everyone. We jump. People, we get the tandems up because I was getting worried. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be the first boogie in Tsunami history where no one makes a skydive. And the weather cleared up, and so we jumped that day, and then we jumped the 5th day we were there, and we were going to leave the next morning. So we jumped all day that day till about 3:30 in the afternoon, and then they picked us up, and we went out on safaris, and then they took us out to the middle of the bush, and they had this huge tent set up with lights. And we had traditional African dancers with the drums, and they were face painting, and they brought the whole kitchen staff out. And it was not paper plates. This was not a barbecue in your backyard. There was fine china and all the booze and it was spectacular, which again, for farewell dinners, spectacular. And people were coming up to me crying, hugging me, saying, how are you ever going to top this? And for me, that made it, okay, we didn't jump the winery, we didn't jump the beach, but we got 2 days of jumps in. One guy got hurt on a landing, but he was okay. He was actually came back out of the hospital and was at the farewell dinner. It was an incredible, incredible, incredible experience.
I've been listening to that recounting. For those listening, I've been smiling ear to ear, even got goosebumps, just imagining that experience. I think that has to go, I would imagine, is one of those things you do in life that you never forget. And it's just one of those, wow, this is
right,
amazing.
And we had people that did both boogies, and they traveled around Africa or somewhere in between the boogies. And these people were coming up to me and said, we have to come back here. And I said, you know what? You're right. Because for me, I want to jump that beach in Plettenberg Bay. So we're going to do it tentatively. Matter of fact, I've been talking to Billy a little bit about it. We're going to tentatively plan to do it in 2027 and do it again because it was so successful.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
You heard it here, everybody.
And as an organizer, the one thing for me, once we got to Shamwari, it was actually easy for me because a couple of things. Number one, I'm at a small lodge, and we had 4 of the rooms were non-skydivers, friends of mine. So then the other room was Herman and Bruno. For me, I'm not getting all the questions. I'm going to breakfast. I'm just like, we're talking about 3 of the couples were from Canada. We're talking hockey. We're talking, I'm not getting are we going to jump today? What are we going to do? I'm not getting any questions. I'm having a great time. We're going on safaris. And then when we finally go and meet everyone skydive, hey, how is it? And, it was, people were having a ball. And Joe, the CEO of Shamwari, drove me around to all the lodges so I could see each one and what they're like. And I mean, that took all afternoon just to go to all the lodges. So for me and Shamwari, they're so used to that high-end service. They were on it. I mean, they had all the vehicles to pick the people up, to do whatever we need. But one of the greatest things is we were on a hold for elephants in the landing area, which is like maybe, it's a first in tsunami history, that's for sure. So those things were entertaining and fun, and just the people, we had to have the runway. They had to have the guys shoo the Impalas off of the runway so the pack could take off. I mean, it was, and we summed it up. I'm with Bruno and Herman and the people from our lodge, and we're going to jump the first day. And first we have to wait because we had a giraffic jam. So the giraffes were on the road. So we had to wait for the giraffes, about 20 of them, to walk across. Then we pass some elephants, then a field of zebras, and then the springboks are out there. And I'm like, you guys, this is what we're passing on the way. And now we're going to go throw ourselves out of an airplane. It was just an incredible, incredible experience to have. Really incredible.
This podcast is sponsored by Beyond Marketing, the digital marketing agency for the skydiving industry. Now, I'm not a fan of lots of ads during a podcast. I mean, who likes ads? So I'll stop talking about how marvelously wonderful Beyond Marketing is. But if you're curious about what the amazing people at Beyond Marketing do to help drop zones and manufacturers thrive, then you should check out their website at dropzone.marketing. That's dropzone.marketing. Rich, tell me, I've never been to South Africa. Aside from the boogie and aside from, again, the highs and lows and the emotions of pulling it off, I have friends who've been there and they're just blown away by so much of that country. What's the biggest takeaway? What surprised you the most about South Africa?
I loved it. I loved it. And everyone said, you're going to go there and you're going to love it. So I talked to a lot of local people, and I'd go to a coffee shop and just start chatting with local people. Because when I go somewhere, I want to be a traveler. I don't want to be a tourist. And I want to know, what do your property taxes cost you? What do they charge you percentage wise? How is your job? I want to know how the country works, right? Without being too intrusive. But so I had some amazing conversations with people. The first thing that struck me was how incredibly friendly everyone was there. And then the second thing is, if you have US dollars, it is unbelievably inexpensive in South Africa. Then it was great for me. And I love when we go somewhere. So South Africa is one of the rare countries we go to where there's licensed skydivers. So it was great to meet the local skydivers and to talk to them about what their life's like, what they do, what their life is like there. And the crime, because you hear about South Africa, and look, I'll be honest, the Tsunami tribe was very nervous about coming to South Africa, being in Cape Town, traveling around by bus. Cape Town is like my new most favorite city on the planet. I had such a great time there. And the food is off the hook crazy. The one thing I noticed about South Africa is, so a braai is a barbecue, right? They got to have the braai. So I've never seen a country that eats so much meat. It's unbelievable. And actually, Billy's pilot told me we were having the barbecue at the drop zone one night. We were having the braai. He's like, I said, do we have any vegetables? He's like, come on, mate, chicken is a vegetable here. But I was blown away at also the haves and the have-nots. You go by the shanty town. So when we went on the helicopter tour, you're looking at these beautiful homes overlooking the ocean and beautiful condos in the city. And then just outside, 5-minute drive, there's these big, huge shanty towns where just people live in complete poverty. So I think 40% unemployment rate there. The education system's a mess. It was really, really interesting to talk to the locals. And that, for me, besides seeing the animals, for me, it was just an incredible experience to be in a country I've never been to and to just talk to the local people, because you hear so many things, oh, it's so dangerous, the murder rate, this and that. And when I stayed at Billy's house in Pretoria, I was walking half a mile to the coffee shop in the mornings. Everyone's saying hello to me, and just it's probably one of the most unique places I've ever been in my travels. And I think it was my 32nd or 33rd country I've been in. And it was just, it grabbed my heart. I really enjoyed it, and the people there, and fascinating conversations with the locals. Fascinating. And I did the same thing in Seychelles, actually. And what's weird is in Seychelles, it's very expensive there. It's all in euros, very expensive, island nation, everything shipped in. You're used to that. So in South Africa, the food was ridiculously inexpensive, and so it was sort of a really a different situation, even though, I mean, they're not technically close, but Seychelles is technically part of Africa. But how expensive it is in Seychelles to how inexpensive it was in South Africa really kind of caught me. And then the other thing was great. All the skydivers that traveled between both boogies, they're telling me they're they're in Victoria Falls, and some went to Kenya, some went to Namibia, some went to Zimbabwe. So they're telling me about all these and showing me pictures about all these other places. I can't wait to go back. I'm looking forward to it, to go back. And we had Grimm and Stephanie from Buck Tours. We worked with them as their licensed tour guides, and they did a great job welcoming everyone at the hotel, getting everything set up. So they did a fabulous job. So for me, other than the weather, South Africa was just a dream experience. It was for as an organizer, it was a dream experience for me, and something that I'm really looking forward to doing again.
And I imagine helped a little bit by the fact that skydiving is already established versus
Yes,
civil aviation trying to sort you out.
right. And when we were all staying, we stayed at this little guest house in Wellington for a few days before the boogie started in Cape Town, and the little group that we traveled with Billy, and we're at this little guest house, and the owners were wonderful people, and actually we paid so the wife could go make a tandem, and she had a great time, and for a little tip for treating us so well. But I'm sitting there, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to go." They were going to lunch or something. I said, "You guys," I said, "I have to stay here. I'm still fighting with the Seychelles Civil Aviation." They're like, "What?" We had a little talk, and they're like, "Oh my God." So I was showing them some of the stuff, like they were trying to charge me and stuff. And they're like, "Oh my God." That's so I'm still trying to sweep up with the Seychelles and finalize that while I'm sitting waiting for the South Africa boogie to start. So, and talking with Marcus, "Hey, is the plane, how, are you going to get it out of there? How's things going?" And, because I care about that. It's, he's my friend. Like I want him to make sure he gets that plane out of Seychelles.
I'd love to have Marcus on the podcast to hear his side of it, of the logistics of getting aircraft moved around and then the headaches of when things break. And I'm sure he's got some stories.
He would be a fantastic, he'll be a much more interesting interview than I am. He's been a
I find that hard to believe.
He's been a DZO. He is a DZO. His dad is like started, I think, the German Federation or something. He was telling me he's flown 2 boogies now with me. He's a 4-way champion in Germany. I mean, he's a great guy. And I can tell you, he will tell you, he felt like he let me down. And I'm like, "Marcus, come on! Like, no one's airplane's better maintained than yours." And he actually his plane was flying in Norway at Voss and had a gearbox failure, and now they had to send it back to the manufacturer, and they're checking it out. His airplane's the most well maintained airplane, and these things that happen, I told Marcus, I said, "You have convinced me I don't ever want to own an airplane, ever, ever, ever." So,
wow.
Yeah.
Rich, you're a storyteller, my friend. That was as good as I thought it would be. Oh, man. You do it right. You do it right.
Thanks.
So what's next? 20-year celebration, 20-year anniversary in Costa Rica, right?
Yeah. So this will be boogie number 31 in 20 years. We have the Barcelona Hotel, where we always do it in Costa Rica, which is nice because it's right down the street. I know all the players. We have civil aviation on board. So that will be really fun. And I told David Clark, my partner, I said, "David," I said, "listen, I've been giving you DZO 101 lessons now for 9 years. I said, you're going to run the boogie and I'm going to skydive." like my wife says, "You sure that's going to happen?" I said, "Well, I'm going to try to skydive more." So I'm looking forward to that, and that's going to be great. It's the first night we jump, and then it's the Super Bowl. So we have a Super Bowl party, of course. Then the next morning we have our golf tournament, and we're going to jump into not only the little town down the beach and give all the school supplies to the school kids that we bring, but then we're going to do a jump into Santa Teresa for the sunset again. And we're going to just really have fun. I'm going to bring more load organizers than I've ever had at a boogie before. I think we'll probably have 300 people. It's going to be crazy. And then a week later, I've teamed up with Hats again. Stefan Hatz, Stefan. These Greek names are hard to pronounce. I just had dinner with him in New York City actually last week. So we're going to do a little 40-person blue hole boogie just after the Costa Rica boogie. And then after that, I don't have any plans for 26. And I actually might take a year off and then go back to South Africa in 27. And my wife and we've been talking about what the direction of Tsunami is going to be. I know I'm way too young and you can't imagine this, but I just turned 64. So I start thinking about, how much longer do I want to do this? And do I still enjoy this? I can tell you at the end of the Seychelles boogie, I kind of wanted to just hang the shingle out and said closed. Tsunami Skydivers is closed. But then we had the wedding and the farewell dinner and everything was okay again. But I don't know. I think I'm done opening new countries up because that takes, as we've discussed, that just takes so much time and so much effort. I've talked to a few people about taking Tsunami Skydivers over from me and carrying it on. No one wants to do it. I don't know. I don't know what the future is. And I might get to the point where maybe I'll do an every other year boogie. Maybe we'll do a little Costa Rica thing every other year or something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what lies ahead.
I'm not taking anything that you've said with any true belief because, when you don't ever interview, a boxer certainly after a loss, not that you've taken an L, but you need time for things to simmer and things to reinvigorate. I'll check back with you, Rich, and we'll see how this narrative changes. You've built an amazing brand. And if you're going to do it every other year, the anticipation of that registration opening up for that event is going to even be higher because you've set a standard.
Well, thank you.
And it's hard to follow. Gosh, I mean, like I've mentioned, I've done a boogie at a fixed location where I have control of most of variables. But to do what you're doing at the level that you're doing it, it's just unprecedented. And it's easy to see why you have such a following, Rich.
Well, thank you. I think I emailed you this or we were talking on Facebook Messenger. The one thing that I want, because I know a lot of younger skydivers listen to your podcast. And so those of us who, and I hate to always say this, but we've made a name for ourselves in the sport. I guess we're a somebody. All the people that you interview, we all have one thing in common, and that's everyone works really freaking hard at what they do in this sport. This just, Tsunami Skydivers, we're an overnight sensation. It took 20 years, but, so that's it. It's the work that people in this sport and the people that have the passion, and I don't care whether you interview the world champions, the four-way people, the free flyers, the DZOs, the pilots, everyone that you've interviewed, they work hard and they care. And I think that's a message to like the younger upcoming skydivers that listen to these podcasts. We don't get to this position because it was easy. Yeah, that's why I love listening to, when I listened to your interview with Tom Sanders and how, at the beginning at Elsinore and all the things he did, selling the videos and stuff. I love that, and people are like, oh, Tom Sanders, but Tom's, worked hard to get to where he is. Dan BC worked hard to get where he is. And those people I admire. There's so many people I admire in this sport because they work so hard to make it so good for the other skydivers in the sport.
And I'll add to that, Rich, and you've got it, and everyone that you have mentioned has this, is the ability to work through adversity, because the path through certainly anything in skydiving, in any level, comes adversity. And certainly in your case, the word that keeps coming to my mind is, well, you got to have a little bit of a lead stomach, because when $1 million that's been wired to a hotel gets caught up in a bank and no one knows where the money is for an extended period of time, and what are the potential ramifications? The hotel doesn't care what your bank details are. They haven't received that money and you're on the hook for it, and what's going on. And oh man, it's you don't want to disappoint. You put so much effort into these things to want people to be happy and to be pleased, and then it just requires wherewithal, and that is the case certainly with Tom Sanders who's been through, gosh, that was quite a journey of an interview. For those that haven't listened to the Tom Sanders interview, that is really quite a journey. And certainly Dan BC and others. It's a special community that we have. And Rich, thank you for making it better.
No, thank you. Thank you. So you need to come to the Costa Rica boogie, or at least come jump the blue hole with us. Come on.
It sounds like I got to get down there. I need to get recurrent and get down there. So
all right,
we'll do that. But Rich, real pleasure. Thank you again. You're a wonderful storyteller, and I can't wait for everybody to hear about this.
Thanks, James. And listen, it's a true honor to be the second person interviewed behind a legend like Cheryl Stearns, who's like, so it's funny because I still look at myself as I'm just a so-so person in the sport. And when you interview people, I'm like, wow, I really look up to those people. So it's an honor for me, for you to reach out to me again and to interview me. This has been a lot of fun. It's always great to talk to you.
Cheers, Rich. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you always have the latest episode, which is released every Monday. If you want to contact the team, our email address is podcast@beyondmarketing.xyz. This episode was edited and engineered by Garnet Znydrick of the YouTube channel Blue Skies Fun Days. Thanks for listening, and join us next week for our next episode.